right. Well, hi everyone. My name is Katie Bradford Osborne. I am the founder and curator at Roaring Artist Gallery, and we are here today for an artist talk with Mindy Sue Wittock. And I'm so excited to hear what she has to say about her art that is in the show. Mindy does soft sculpture, and they are absolutely amazing. We've been able to have her in our gallery a couple times now, and I feel so thankful that we get to do that. Thank you so much, Mindy, for being a part of this show and for being here with us today. And I'm going to start with your bio and then I'm going to turn it over to you. All right. Okay. Mindy Sue Wittock is an artist and mother who works out of her home studio in Upper Michigan. She makes soft sculpture that explores the intersection of childhood memory and experiences in motherhood. Wittock has an MFA from Arizona State University with a concentration in fibers. She has previously worked as an associate lecturer of art at the University of Wisconsin-Fond du Lac and University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. Wittock has an extensive exhibition record and has taught many textile-based workshops. She survives on coffee, enjoys watching vintage television shows, and listening to 80s music. I love that. All right. Make sure that, yes, you should be able to screen share and take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Katie, so much for having me. I so appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. And I think it's just fantastic that you give us the opportunity to really share about our work when it comes to the exhibition. So it just gives a little bit more background and, like art is so visual and people have their first guttural responses, but it's really great when you can hear why and how the things are being made. So I'm happy to have the opportunity. So like Katie said, I do like listening to 80s music, and a lot of my work is inspired by my childhood, and I was born in the early 80s. So those first visual responses as a kid, like watching cartoons and having these friendship relationships with imaginary characters and pop culture characters that are on TV has highly influenced what I do. Not only like the content of my work, but also my color palettes and how I perceive the world. I'm always in touch with my inner child when I approach my studio work. So I make the work that's inspired by and for my childhood self. I believe that this little girl still lives in my heart, and I seek her sense of play and belief in magic every time I approach art making in my studio. So I thought it would be fun to share an image of myself as a young girl and then a current image of me in my studio. I think there's so much similarity of these two humans, and I know that as people we grow and change. As we learn more things, we learn more about ourselves, but I really think it's important to stay in touch with the person I was as a child, because that person has this extensive imagination, and I never want to lose that, especially as a maker. And like I said, I'm very inspired by imagery from my childhood. The colors, the 80s were a really fantastic time for color and textures, and if you've ever watched 80s cartoons, whether you were born in that time or not, they're very strange. There was like a very strange wave of cartoons like Gem and the Holograms, even He-Man. They're just, when I go back and watch them now, they're so different to what my daughter watches. But I'm grateful that I had those in my life. This is an image of Gem and the Holograms, just to give you a color feel, little color background. Also Rainbow Bright and Elf. Elf was this puppet character, another very strange 80s television show of this alien who lived with the family. But I felt so connected to him as a kid and wanted him to like be my uncle. And it's so weird, like to think of this hairy alien character that ate cats with somebody that I felt loved and supported by as a child. So that work, the work that I make now is like really inspired by that love and support that those characters gave me as a child who went through divorce as a kid, I felt like my world was always changing, and that the thing that stayed constant were my toys. And I could create these worlds for myself where I had like these friends that lived inside of these characters and these stuffed animals that were really comfort objects. I grew up with a blanket. I still have it. It's my blankie. And that was something I needed with me all the time as a kid. And just having that sense of like the sense of love and comfort from a textile, from an object, is something that I think so much about now, is that I had these tactile little things that were able to comfort and make me feel secure. So these two pieces are currently in the exhibition. And I think we'll be taking a walk through that at the end of my talk here. But they're all made from collected stuffed animals that I've cut apart and stitched back together. And I find that there's something conceptual there too about this idea of tearing apart and sort of mending them back together to create this new thing. That's something I think we do as humans every day too. Like we come to conflict and we need a compromise, and there's these ways of like tearing apart and always mending back together. So it's something I dealt with as a child, something I'm still dealing with as an adult. They're made from characters from my childhood. Beanie Babies. I've gotten so many donations of Beanie Babies. It's fantastic. I've been able to create a lot of sculpture with them. So the piece on this piece here is called I Care, and it's made with some Care Bear fabric and then some stuffed animals from my childhood. And this piece here is called Bop, and it's made from Beanie Babies and some other ephemera. So thinking of those like comfort objects and how I always had to have something with me as a child when I was sleeping, playing, I always had a object with me. And this, I know my mom is listening and she'll remember Baby Heather was one of my most favorite dolls as a child. I lost Baby Heather tragically a couple of years after this photo was taken to, my dad was taking me for a walk on this train bridge and Baby Heather had fell into the river. It was very tragic. And I was so upset that he wouldn't jump in and save her. Like in hindsight, of course, I'm glad he didn't jump in and save her, but my doll was gone forever. That was a very tragic, that's a sidebar. That has nothing to do with this work, but it was a tragic event. But I think about myself as being this little kid and having these comfort objects. And now I'm a mother and I have this daughter who is also sort of like my comfort object. She's very much a part of who I am. And having that duality of childhood, motherhood, and mothering my childhood self, and now mothering my daughter, and sort of living in this in-between space. It's a very strange, wonderful experience. Also, I think it's important to notice that my aesthetic carries through my life, even into my daughter's wardrobe. She does. So those comfort objects, there's something so intriguing to me about how we play with toys as a child and how we put feeling into these inanimate objects and how they become so much a part of our lives when we're kids. Whether it's a stuffed animal, any kind of toy, like something that we're putting our energy and imagination into. And we really get to be free and explore as a child this different worlds that we create. And sometimes that fizzles out a little bit as we grow up, like that magic just sort of dies out. And it's sad that we're not able to tap into that all the time because there's so much wonderful things that can happen when we allow ourselves to sort of back up and let go and let that imagination take over. So these are little sculptures that were created based off the New Kids on the Block song, Hold On Girl. So we have hold on girl, hold on, ooh girl, hold on. And I really was thinking a lot about holding on to that magic as you grow up, especially when you get to that in-between stage where you're really not supposed to be playing Barbies anymore, and you have a crush on a boy, and you love a boy band, but you still want to play. And it's a very strange, weird place to be in. Speaking as a from a female perspective, when you're that like 12, 13, and it's like you still want to use that imagination. It's a strange place to navigate. And I like to think that maybe I'm still navigating that in the sense of like, I want that magic. I still want that magic to exist, and I want my daughter to have that magic. But I want to back off and let her experience that on her own as well. And this is just an image. My uncle would come and visit, and he always brought a stuffed animal, and it would be like my favorite thing for the next like month and a half. So just like that, holding on to that stuffed animal and having this love for something. I still do that. I'm still doing that in my studio. Um, this piece is not in the show, but I wanted to talk a little bit about it with the idea of like holding on to the magic and having being able to tap into those pop culture characters and toys and that aesthetic of kiddom. And I loved playing Barbies, of course, and they had all these little tiny accessories. It would be something like I would collect them in little like vignettes of things where I had like, rap and rock and Barbie, her little boombox that would actually play real rapping sounds, and her little medallion was something that like I just was so attracted to. And I collected it and sort of, I don't want to say hoard, but I had like this, like it felt magical to me having all these tiny little things. And I also collected candy wrappers when I was a kid. I had like a very fierce candy wrapper collection, me and my best friend Heather, and was devastated when my mother threw it away because to her it was garbage. To me, they were like objects of like beauty. So this is a piece I'm currently working on called I Collect Things. And I think I'm up to like 135 now. I would like to hit 200. But it's like trading cards that I collected when I was a kid, and then all these little trinkets sort of coming together to make a small sculptural object. And then it's hung with a 80s rubber bracelet. So that it's something you can collect on its own. It's all these little trinkets together, and it's this beautiful little object you can collect on its own, or you can have a collection of many of them. And I really like that idea. So the toys, like those toys that I played with, were really super inspiring to me, and the colors for sure. Strawberry shortcake, rainbow bright, the trolls, Care Bears, everything from my childhood seemed to come out of the rainbow in the best way possible, really bright colors. So I love using those in my work. This is a sculpture called Patio Green Lucky Lights, and it's made from a rainbow bright character, a Care Bear, little civilian families, Gumby, and a troll, candy cigarettes, like all the things that felt a little bit magical as a kid. Collaging those toys together is really fun because it's like creating a new thing out of all these characters that were my best friends. This piece is really special because Katie, the curator of Roaring Artist Gallery, had asked if I would make a sculpture with a dog that she had as a child, a toy that she had. So she sent me this Go-Go puppy, and I made a sculpture out of it for the exhibition. And what I loved about this is I didn't have Go-Go puppy, but I had this little beagle guy that I would walk around and like you have a pet. Now they have fur real friends. My niece has a fur real tiger, so it like growls and walks around and follows her around the house like a little robot. But having this like feeling that you have this fancy little dog on a leash, super exciting. And it was really fun to make this sculpture and sort of delve into that like idea of having this imaginative pet. And I was thinking a lot about my own dog and my daughter and her imagination, and how much like these two like to play together, like they're actual siblings. And having that sense of reality and imagination sort of meshed together. It's fun to live in that space as a mother, watching her play with her toys like that, and she treats our dog Chuck like a little human puppy boy, and they have this like relationship together that he likes to play with her. He has to have a toy near him when he's playing with her, and having this idea of play that happens between the animal and the child and the toy, and how it's kind of wrapping together. It made making this piece really fun in my head. And the aesthetic carries through with my art branding that my Wonder Maker, Jenna, has helped me really like key in on those points that I really love about the 80s aesthetic, sort of this Art Deco 80s revival feeling, and how I can bring that into other aspects of my artist life as I'm making the work. My branding, the tags, my website, any of my paperwork will have this like aesthetic feeling that it gives you an idea of maybe what you're in for when you're dealing with me. This is a photo of me and my cousin in our matching shorts we are so proud of. And I love that, like, the shorts that we're wearing here is so reminiscent of this pattern too, of coming back into my life, and creating like those patterns again, using in the textiles, using the characters that I was so like connected to as a kid, like using those in my work, and then creating pattern on top by embellishing dots over it, and sort of using this idea of preservation and hiding a pattern so that you have to look for it, and creating like another layer of textile over the textile is something I'm really interested in. So pattern, like when you're in fibers and textiles, pattern is just a natural thing that happens in our line of work. I mean, the home textiles that you deal with now, like curtains, bed sheets, pillowcases, all have a designed pattern on them. And especially when they design things for children, there's a lot of the characters that the kids see on their favorite television shows and everything. And here we have a Smurf fabric, and here's a Care Bear blanket. And I liked this idea of creating a sort of a hazy pattern. Like the dots are a solid thing, but they create this hazy like view of the actual pattern behind the dot. And I like that as a metaphor for memory. Now we get to my favorite part of the program, is talking about New Kids on the Block. I was really felt lucky to be invited to a show in this exhibition by Arthi, who is also in the show. And Arthi and I connected through Artist Mother podcast in a breakout room at a retreat over New Kids on the Block. And we have both had this connection to this boy band that saw us through difficult times in our childhood. And I thought that was pretty great. That was a pretty great connection to have with somebody. That is like something that a lot of women have, whether it's New Kids on the Block or some other band maybe or singer or pop culture icon that they get connected to in their younger years. And it's a sort of like puppy love, right? You get a crush. Oh, I love Joey McIntyre. I'm going to marry him one day. It's like, it feels like this could be a reality, but there's so much more behind that it becomes like the New Kids on the Block for me were a stability of something that never changed when a lot was changing around me. It was an escape. Their music just like filled me with joy. It felt like a world I could escape into. I even had my friend Andy Flaminio lived like 2 blocks from me, and his mom had HBO. So his mom would record all of the New Kids on the Block concerts for me. And it was just a really great way for me to feel like I belonged somewhere when I felt like maybe I didn't belong anywhere else. And I had that connection with Arthi. It was really nice. I also experienced this when I went to my first New Kids on the Block concert as a 37-year-old woman. I never got to go when I was a kid, and I got to see them in concert a couple summers ago. And it was like drilled into me that this is something a lot of women have, because when they came onto the stage, I had like strangers hugging me and crying like, oh my gosh, I don't get um, and then even members of the band acknowledged throughout the concert that like they know what they were to this like generation of women growing up. And that was really nice to hear. So I never got the meet and greet pass to meet any of the boy bands. So the closest I got was to going to a Wahlburgers in the Mall of America and getting a photograph with this cutout of Donnie, Marky Mark, and their brother Paul. He kind of gets the short end of the stick. He's the one who makes all the burgers. He doesn't get all like the fame because these two are real they're the earners of the family. So the New Kids on the Block, I have an exhibition coming up that's just dedicated to New Kids on the Block, and that feeling I had as a kid, that in between feeling of being a child and also somebody growing up and having feelings for a boy that was unattainable. So I'm excited to be making this work. And here's one of the sacred textile pieces. It's a New Kids on the Block sleeping bag covered in the dots to sort of cast that veil, that phantom veil. When we talk about like the phantom of nostalgia, Katie and I were talking about that before the talk, that this sort of like ghosty feeling of that you can almost get to that feeling again, but it's not, you can't quite get there. And this is a New Kids on the Block sleeping bag carrying case that I've also dotted. And then here is an image of me as an 8-year-old in a New Kids on the Block t-shirt. And then my dad for Christmas a couple of years ago had found me the same t-shirt and regifted it to me. So it's this thing that it's never leaving me. It's a feeling that I carry through as an adult, that sort of is a part of my inner child that allows me to be able to make this work. And I feel really lucky that I get to still tap into that. I still get to be this awkward, buck-toothed child who gets to explore these like imaginative worlds and connect back. And it's not just even connecting back to my own childhood. It's like accessing this balance of being a mother and my own person and also my inner child, and having this painful, like bittersweet feeling of nostalgia where you can almost get back, but you can't. There's no way you can get back there. There's no way to time travel. And the closest I get is doing this work and watching my daughter have her own childhood. And she's become sort of a collaborator with me. She'll leave me trinkets on my desk and say, here, you can use this for art making. And a while back when she was going through some treatments at the hospital, she had gotten a bag of ring pops. And every time she finished a ring pop, she would leave the base up in my studio on my desk. So I created a series of ring pop rings, and then she modeled them for me with her little artistic hands with all the markers on them. So it's a strange like parallel line from myself and her, and seeing myself in her and watching herself have her own personality. It's a weird trail to walk, but I'm happy that I get to do it. And she, like I said, she leaves like the trinkets for me to make art out of, but I also saved all of her baby clothes and things that she was connected to that she grew out of. So I was making these sculptures for a while, and this one is in the exhibition, where this is like a dress that she never wanted to take off. These are her Spider-Man jammies that she was connected to. This is the foot of her tight. This is a pizza sock that my squad gave me when I lived in New Hampshire. This is a rainbow sock that Louise liked to wear as a leg warmer. So that there's all this stuff that doesn't need to mean anything to anybody else, but it comes from a place of motherhood, childhood, imagination. It has those characters on it that she was connected to, different from the characters I was connected to, but it's still that same thought where these textiles are with us in our daily lives from when we're kids. And here's like another image of me with the shirt tails having those pop culture characters. So there's that juxtaposition of motherhood, childhood, childhood self, daughter self, person that comes together with these things. And that's not lost on me. I think about that all the time, especially when I get some moments with Louise where we have a moment of rest, and it's like a reminder that this is fleeting and she's not going to always be this little. And already we've gone through 8 years already, and how can that even happen? Like, she was just a baby, and how am I this person? How am I almost 40? Like, I'm still this person over here that's just figuring things out and thinking through life and trying to use my imagination to make things better. So that parallel is with me every day in my art life and in my mom life, in my personal life. That's something that's I'm always thinking about. How fast this time really goes by, and how fast it went by for me. And I wonder, is she going to have those same connections with her things that I had? But it's also super inspiring to watch her play and her toys, the color that she creates. And this, again, this is Chuck having a toy, so he feels like he's included and he gets to play with her. And then these are all her little people toys. And then back here we have my New Kids on the Block set and MC Hammer dolls that she is now interested in. So it's like a second layer of me. This is where it becomes like psychologically strange for me, where it's like, it's her playing, but sometimes she looks like me. She makes a face that looks like me. And then it's like watching myself play and watching myself talk back to me, but she's a totally different person. It's a very weird world to be a mother, I think. So I use that feeling really and put that back into the sculpture. And these are two pieces that are in the show when we take a walk. This is a cloth jewelry box, similar to the ones that my Nana would make when I was a child, and it would smell like potpourri inside. And this one sings. It's really nice. And then this is like a vase with some of those textiles that Louise wore as a child coming out of it. So it's like a tapping into the childhood stuff, but also like working through the motherhood stuff at the same time. And I threw this slide in to just carry through how this is something that is always happening in my daily life. The aesthetic carries through. It's not just for the art making, but this is honestly who I am as a person. I am not joking when I say that I am always like seeking what 8-year-old Mindy would do in a situation, or how 8-year-old Mindy does this thing, and how lucky I feel that that child really still lives inside of me. It goes to stickering, like I drink copious amounts of coffee, and then those little stickers they put on the coffee have become embellishments for my car. Still thinking of New Kids on the Block and how much I felt like they were a savior to me as a child. This is the back of my jean jacket. And it's having that aesthetic is just truly a part of who I am. It's not just something that I make the artwork about. And I think that's reiterated here. This is my child, not a sculpture. This is my child, my baby child, cozied up to take a walk in the crispy fall Wisconsin weather. And this is me working on a recent sculpture of a mirror that I like to think of as the sort of time travel, the mirror on the wall. But this is not lost on me that this is my child and this is my artwork, and my life is very much interwoven. And that's something I'm proud of. I'm glad to see that there's this like thing that's happening, it's continuously happening in my life. It's not just in one area. And I wanted to leave you with this favorite quote from my favorite artist, who my daughter is named after, Louise Bourgeois. I am not what I am what I do with my hands. I love that so much because I think these are like my favorite tool. I feel like as long as I have the use of my hands and I have a needle and thread, I can really do anything. And I like to put that spirit and that thought into my entire life. And I make these manifestos every once in a while to sort of put out there what I'm asking for and what I want and what I need, and goal set, and how I can do that to bring forth to continue to make the work that I make. So that's all for me.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for Mindy right now? And then we're going to take a quick little tour through the exhibition so we can see her work in the exhibition. All right. Well, I'm going to, here, let me make sure I've got it up and ready to go. Okay, I'm going to screen share then.
Perfect.
All right, can you see it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so this is the Between the Lines exhibition. It is going to be running from July 1st through August 1st. And so much of my heart is in this exhibition that I just love it. And I'm so glad that you're a part of it, Mindy. I think your work it's just absolutely perfect in it.
I think it's so cool how we can navigate this virtual gallery space. You've done such an amazing job curating the show.
You, I I feel like every show that I do is my favorite in some way. I'm like that's my favorite. Everything's my favorite person.
I feel like with every piece of work I make too, I'm like, oh, this one, I love it.
But really, I'm just super enthusiastic about what I do. But Go-Go Puppy might be my favorite thing. It's my favorite sculpture like ever. I absolutely love how Go-Go Puppy turned out. It's I think we were talking earlier about that phantom of nostalgia, and I definitely feel that in my chest whenever I see Go-Go Puppy. But at the same time, it's such good memories of a time that I don't have touch with. Those people are not, I mean, they're many of the people who were part of these memories, like my grandmother passed away, and it's not like I can go back to that point. But it's a really, really special feeling to be able to connect with it through your art, Mindy. I think that's a really special thing that you do for others. And I think it's a really brave thing to do, to constantly be in touch with that feeling in your art.
Thank you.
We have the box over here. I love the box.
That I was so excited to find that. Yes, I was so excited to find that because my Nana had always made these little like fabric jewelry boxes that were almost like plushy. And
Mm-hmm.
they had this like potpourri smell to them. And this just brought me right back to that. And I never had like, jewelry as a child, but like filling it with the trinkets or like those fake fingernail tips and the pretend lipstick and stuff felt so magical. And when I found the box, I was like, I have to do something with it. Um, and I love the challenge of embellishing and stitching on found objects because you don't know, like, I didn't make that thing, like the structure of it. So I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but it's such a great challenge. And I always love like taking that on and figuring out how can I attach these. And everything is always attached with a needle and thread. I don't use glue or anything like that.
Oh, that's really cool.
And I think there's something conceptual behind that too, of this idea of attachment and stitching things together. So it's an act of repair. They're not meant to come apart again. Like this one linear thread holds these things together and makes it stronger. I like that layer of using needle and thread as well.
That makes a lot of sense because once you poke a hole in something, it's not like you can
Yeah,
un- like it's there now.
yeah. This is sort of an aggressive way to make things, right? Like you're
It really is, yeah.
to hold it together. Yep.
You.
Umbop is one of my favorite pieces. It's like the early adolescence of the 90s when Hanson was popular and everybody collected Beanie Babies. And I had my fair share of Beanie Babies. I didn't have a ton, but I held on to Princess Diana and Tabasco the Bull because I thought they were going to be my payouts one day. Everybody said, those are the ones. They're going to be worth a lot of money. Guess what? They're not. Still got them.
There's a whole bunch of them in little boxes at my in-laws' house.
Oh, yes.
And
Yep.
that, yeah, same thing. They're not actually worth anything,
No,
but
but
they're worth something to them.
exactly. Isn't that like kind of funny and kind of great that something like a small stuffed animal can mean so much to somebody?
Mhm. My daughter's special lovey thing that had to go everywhere with us was a little pink Beanie Baby bear from the Cheesecake Factory.
Oh,
Its name was Bear Baby, and we had 3 Bear Babies because Bear Baby was constantly getting lost. So,
you had a backup.
but she still has those 3 Bear Babies. They're still sitting in her bedroom in a
Love
special
it.
little place.
But I had a blankie and I still have it. Um and my mom would remember that like I left it in Chicago at my aunt's house and they had to like FedEx it overnight. I just was totally lost without that. And I always hated the idea that I was going to be too old for it. Like, you're going to grow out of this. You shouldn't be having a blankie anymore. Like, I had a aunt who would hide it from me and be like, well, you're going to be in third grade now. You don't need a blankie. And how devastating. Like, that's not anybody else's decision to make except for the person who's connected to that thing. And my daughter has her own loveys. She calls them her guys. And she started doing sleepovers with cousins and stuff, and she'll be like, oh, maybe I don't need to bring my guys, it's embarrassing. And I was like, there's nothing to be embarrassed about here. These are just things you sleep with. And more often than not, other people have things too. And
Mhm.
you can be 25 and still sleeping with your guys. You can be 75 and still sleeping with your guys. There's no, like, why do we have to stop that? I just
Mhm.
don't understand.
I had a pillow. I stole it from my mother when I was tiny, and I was not a good sleeper, so she let me keep it because she thought it might help me sleep. I don't know if it actually did or not, but it became Huggy Pillow.
Like,
And
oh,
Huggy Pillow still lives in my closet. He's so dilapidated you can't like sleep with it anymore, but I
they,
still have
they
Huggy Pillow.
my blanket is shreds. It is like just a cloth of shreds. Like it's my shroud. And someday when I pass and I get cremated and crushed into a diamond and stitched onto a hot pink velvet pillow with chartreuse ball fringe,
I
I
love
want that
that.
like to be part of it. I want that blankie to be somehow stitched into that scenario. Yeah, so this piece, I Care, uh, is one of my recent, like this is a recent direction I'm taking where I'm sort of melding these stuffed animals together and stitching them and then covering the stuffed animals in dots to sort of create that cohesive pattern that brings all these different objects together with one pattern, but also sort of obscures the object a little bit. So it's that metaphor of memory, nostalgia. You're almost there. You can almost see it. You can't quite see it. It's kind of the thing you remember growing up with. It's a little bit different. So it has all that background to it. And I love those layers. I love metaphorical layers and physical layers in artwork. I think it's like,
I do as well. I think that the concept that you use with the dots is just brilliant. I think it's the perfect metaphor for
thank you.
that veil of nostalgia. Over here.
We got the little floor piece.
Yeah. I
That's
love
I found that vase when I was antiquing with my art kid friends, and it had that it's like it's iridescent, so it's really hard to photograph. Like when you're with it in person, it just has that magic quality. I remember as a kid, like even I still use things like that. Like I have this bag that has like the glitter pouch in it, but having that sort of iridescence always felt otherworldly and super magical. Um, and I wanted to use it in my work somehow. and I created this. I did a series called Imaginary Friends when my daughter was younger, because we had moved out to New Hampshire and I was lonely. I was just so lonely. I was by myself a lot with my 2-year-old, and I felt like I didn't really know who I was anymore because I wasn't getting all the studio time in. I wasn't teaching in academia anymore. I um, I was a mom and a housewife, and it felt like a totally strange, different world. But I also loved it. Like I loved being with my daughter and having that opportunity to be home with her was amazing. But from art, Mindy wasn't getting enough time in. So I started this artist residency in motherhood created by Linda Clayton. And it connected me with other women who were doing like navigating that same area of life. And that felt amazing to have those connections. And then I started doing this body of work, Imaginary Friends, where I was collecting Louise's clothes that she grew out of, toys she didn't want anymore, and then building a sculpture from them and creating like my toys were my friends when I was a kid, and now I'm this new mother creating like this whole body of work so I don't feel lonely. Like I want to be connected to all these like imaginary, this idea of imaginary friend that you have when you're a kid, and then when you're a new mom, it's also this like weird, strange world. So this came later down the line when I found that plant piece, and it was like an imaginary friend house plant. So what would it look like if I had a whole room of just imaginary friends, and like all the furniture became, I did a footstool that was an imaginary friend. I had a concept, I never really made it, but like an armchair that became an imaginary friend. So it was like all of these objects that in my adult life were now my friends, like my toys were when I was a kid. Oh, you're muted, Katie.
You'd think at some point I would figure out the reason. Lisa said in the chat, I love how when I feel connected to your works that I can go on a journey with your memories as you explain the pieces, but then also access my own memories. I love that too. I think that's a really cool.
And you know, like I was thinking too about that line, like that line between motherhood and childhood, and mother and daughter, and mother and person, own person, and how like how all this fits together, and like I'm constantly navigating all of those roles in my life, and experiencing things as an adult that I did as a child that I have to face now as a grown person instead of a child person. And it's ever evolving, and things like the imaginary friends and then the new work that I'm making is so interconnected. Just as like all those memories and nostalgia and events and stuff as a child that now as an adult happen, that there's this sort of way that things find their way back around again. It's so interesting. This is a sculpture piece called Lulu, after my daughter, Louise, we call her Lulu. And it was made from, she had these princess pajamas that had that iridescent underlay of fabric and tulle over the top. And they were her favorite. She would squeeze, she's like, look, it still fits. They were like a size 2 and she'd be 6, and it would be so tight and like up to her knees. And she's like, it still fits, mom. Like, you're gonna go into cardiac arrest in the middle of the night because you can't breathe. Like, we need to take those off. And then she finally came to the point where she was like, you know, she left them on my studio table and said, you can make art out of these. So I never take anything from her without her permission. These were little footy jammies with cupcakes that she wore that were passed down from my niece. So there's some layers there, and crib sheets, and these little glass baubles we used on a tree. And this was so fitting to who she was at the age she was when I made this, that it feels like it's a piece of her.
That's really cool. I love that collaborative aspect of your work with your daughter. I think that's something really special.
You know, and I always think when people are like, do you make art with your kids? And I'm like, no, like I don't want her to be physically working with me. But then I thought about it, and like, we do collaborate in this whole different way where she is a like giver of supplies. And then I get to make something out of it. And she loves to critique me. She loves.
My daughter's a fan of that too. Usually she's pretty nice, but
Like, maybe you want to try that again. Like, she's not afraid to tell me it's okay to start over, mom. One time I was working in my sketchbook and I was just drawing. I usually use my sketchbook for ideas and like research. It's a lot of writing, maybe some quick sketches. And I had made a quick sketch of just an idea of a form I wanted to create by stitching these things together. And it happens so intuitively. Like, I pull these pieces together. It's a lot of like figuring out how something fits, maybe taking something off, trying again. But sometimes I do have like, I know I want this shape to happen. So I just want to get that shape down on paper. And I had it in my sketchbook. And then I went to go do something and I came back to my studio and it was colored in black pen, like almost colored in a little bit out the lines. And then she said, there, I made it better. I walked away and I was like, okay. Okay.
that's amazing. I always say I don't work with my daughter, but I'm not sure I could make art if she didn't exist. Like it's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's sort of I think how my relationship with art and my daughter is.
Yeah. It's like, I appreciate that. I mean, I'm glad you think you made it better. That's good.
That is so cute. That's one of those stories that you'll remember forever and it'll be part of one of those things she's telling whenever she's doing her artist talks and
Yeah. My mom was an artist and she is telling me down the road, like, I might be an artist one day, but nothing like what you do. I'm gonna be a different artist. I was like, that's totally fine. You don't have to do what I do. We're here. We're all here to do our own thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is everything that's in the here, we'll look at Go-Go Puppy up close again. Oh, I love Go-Go Puppy so much.
It was such a pleasure to make that. And again, the challenge of like stitching to this toy that I had to sort of manipulate because it's so furry, like getting down into the beef of
Yeah, like what do you attach it to?
plastic. Yeah. So I'm like covering it. There's the textile that covers the plastic body of the piece. So I'm just stitching into that. But my favorite thing about Go-Go Puppy 2 is you can see in this image, there's a little bit of that like plasticness in the form, kind of by the other textile forms coming up. And there's sequins pressed in between that plastic to create that. I had the hair bows like that when I was a kid that I just thought were the best thing in the world. The plastic with all the sparkles inside of it, and it just, oh, I could get lost in that forever. Like a glitter bouncy ball, like where it was just
And
like
magic.
another world. Yeah, this magic. And I love that Go-Go Puppy has that on it with these other like toys and forms coming off of it with the pom-poms. It was so much fun to make. Yeah.
Laura said that's my favorite piece too. And Erica said, I love Go-Go Puppy too. Laura asked if it still works. I don't think it does it?
I think if you put batteries in it, it would.
Okay.
Yep. You could. I'll try it out when I'm home and we'll take it for a walk.
If it works, you're gonna have to video that. That'll be amazing. That's that's a work of art in itself. That's so cool.
I love it. You know what it reminds me of too, like being a kid and being allowed, like when you're on a family trip. I grew up in a small town, so we didn't have like a toy store in town. But if I was visiting relatives and we got to go to Toys R Us, or we were in a mall and like got to just go in KB Toys and even just look, not even buy anything, it was that sense of that like excitement, that you would get, that just like it would drive me to want to go home and play again. Like, just even if I didn't get to walk out with anything, like seeing the Barbies in their packaging and the Barbie accessories you could get, like the shower with the little pump that would make the water come out, and the little civilian families, now they're called calico critters, but all these little families with their tiny little pots and pans, and like having all of that. And then I would just like seep it in and like take notes, like, okay, now I'm ready to go and, hit the ground running with my own toys. Uh,
Mhm.
and my daughter is the same way. And she loves those little critters, the little civilian families. And now they make these little blind bags where you get like a $5 little bag and you don't know what critter's in it. And it comes with a Halloween costume. And we got one at Barnes and Noble on a road trip, and we were driving, and she was like, okay, I'm going to open it, Mom. And I was like, oh, I'm so excited. And then she opens it. And she's like, oh, it's a teeny tiny little kitty with a ghost costume. And it was like the highlight of,
So
and
cute.
playing with it in the back and talking to it. It just, that's like where that weird, strange psychological parallel happens as a mother and an inner child with my child, where I feel like I'm watching myself play, but it's her. She's her own person. But there's this like weird wavelength of like time travel that happens that really is why I make what I'm. Why I do what I do. It's because I'm trying to figure out what that feeling is and how I can access it at a deeper level.
Mhm. I love that. I think that one of the most interesting things to me about your work, I mean, if you're thinking about children's toys and things like that, these are things that people don't take as seriously.
Yeah.
Now, if we're mothers and we know that if a lovey gets lost, what that's like, then you do, you take those seriously. But I think that you're really reaching a depth with these human emotions that we can all understand and that we all experience on some level, no matter what our childhood was like, no matter what we played with. And I think that's a really, really special aspect of your work. And I love that you're doing it. I think it is such an important thing that you're doing in the world. And
Thank you.
I love that we're able to show them in the gallery. I think
Well,
it's really something special.
just pleased to be a part of the exhibition.
Oh, Erica said, "Oh my God, you have to walk it." Talking about Coco Puppy.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So,
Well, do we have any more questions for Mindy? Or Mindy, do you have anything else that you wanted to mention?
yeah, if anybody has questions, feel free. I guess the thing that really I'm like super interested in is that children, all children, no matter what sort of background they come from or what life they come from, have that access to that imagination. And all children go through some sort of, I mean, childhood trauma doesn't have to mean that you are like that you went through something really bad. And granted, children do. There is that level of trauma, but also that I like to remind myself, as a mother to a young child, that children are experiencing life the same time you are as an adult. And it's so easy to be like, stop crying, don't do that, right? You're too grown up for that, lovey. You shouldn't be playing with dolls anymore. And there's no need for that at all. And also that having that sense of like reminder that children are experiencing our life at the same time, and that they don't have a sense of control. Like they don't get to control a lot that happens, right? The adults say, this is when we're eating dinner. No, you can't have a cookie. It's bedtime. You have to wake up. And we set those parameters so our children are safe and they are loved and everything. But a reminder that that sense of control, I even remember being a kid and being like, oh, I just can't wait until I'm a grown up and I can eat cookies whenever I want. Like that sense of having some kind of freedom and being able to make decisions. And I think that's a lot of what, like, I go back into my childhood self. And we talk, I know on Artist Mother podcast, we talk a lot about mothering ourselves as grown women, how we kind of go back as mothers and view our childhood selves, and how would you handle that situation? And thinking of that, like that sense of like no control over situations, when things are a little bit turmoily, as life can happen in any adult life, and how we sort of are able to structure our own children through that, and how I was able to navigate those times myself as a child, and all of that lives in that interwoven space. of why I make the work that I do. I don't even know if any of that made sense. I feel like I went off on a
It made a lot of sense. I feel like this is definitely an artist talk. I feel like I'm leaving with a deeper connection to your work, and I think that it's really, this is really awesome.
Thanks, Katie.
Well, if we don't have any other questions, we will go ahead and wrap up. But I want to thank everyone so much for coming and supporting the gallery and supporting Mindy, and for listening and enjoying this with us. Just a moment, let me see what.
Oh,
Sarah said, beautiful work, Mindy.
oh.
But thank you all so much for everything that you do to support us here at the gallery, including attending these artist talks. It means so much to the artists, and it means so much to us. And it's, Laura said, thank you so much, Katie and Mindy. This was a wonderful talk. I agree. I think that this was one of the, this is already one of my favorite artist talks. There we go. The favorite thing again. But thank you so much, Mindy, for being here. And thank you all. And we'll go ahead and wrap up, and I'll see you all next time.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.